Hey guys, Happy New Year! I hope you're feeling energized and ready to crush 2025. Today we have someone who's absolutely crushing it, Jarrett Chirico. What a great episode to kick us all into gear. Jarrett is complete dynamite, and if this episode doesn't light a fire under your rear, I don't know what will. Now, this is definitely a spicy episode as Jarrett is a no BS, straight shooting kind of guy. So strap your seatbelts, hang on to your rackets, and have a good listen to what he has to say. I think he is a powerhouse and he's definitely super passionate about moving this industry forward. I really enjoy my conversation with Jarrett because I think he's super authentic, and whether you agree with him or not, you know exactly where he stands and why, and I think that's just a great quality in a person, particularly in this industry. Not a lot of people will be raw and honest with you, trust me. So I definitely appreciate Jarrett doing that and being candid and sharing his stances on certain things in the industry. Like I said, it's really refreshing. So I think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year, to say the least. There's a lot going on in the country and in the world. So I think this year it is especially important that we all get better at listening to different points of view and really looking at all the different angles, not just disregarding those who see things in a different way. I think especially nowadays, people just want to surround themselves with people who they agree with. And I think that can be a dangerous path and actually a pretty lame one, to be honest. Look, I don't always agree with our guests. I would say I probably agree with most things, but not necessarily all of them. And sometimes my mind is changed, sometimes it's not. And that's okay. That's part of what makes podcasts fun to listen to. Not just podcasts, but conversing and getting to know other people. Also, not everything needs to be a debate, right? Sometimes it's just good to listen and let go of the need to be right or to change the other person's mind. I don't know, maybe I've been doing too much yoga or something because I used to love being right. But I think that being right just doesn't necessarily bring me that much joy anymore. Oh my God, am I growing up? Finally? No way. All right, my therapy session is over. Let's get on with it. Remember, you can always reach me at Vida Tennis Podcast at gmail.com or our website, vidatennispodcast.com. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss new episodes and so that Vida Tennis gets recommended to other listeners of similar shows. Get ready to hear from one of the best out there, only here at Vida Tennis. Enjoy. Welcome to Vida Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. I'm your host, Jennifer Gelhaus, and today we welcome the king of the court himself, Jarrett Chirico, who is the Director of Racquets at Royal Oaks Country Club and President and founder of the Directors Club of America. Jarrett has led rackets programs at Baltimore Country Club and Green Valley Country Club, and he holds PTR certifications in tennis, pickleball, platform tennis, as well as RSPA and CRSE. He was a top junior player in the U.S. in every age group, played for the University of Virginia, and World Team Tennis for the Philadelphia Freedoms. He has received multiple awards and accolades, presented at world conferences, and was recently featured in the cover of Club and Resorts Business Magazine, which was a first for any racket professional. Welcome, Jarrett, to Vida Tennis. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm still getting used to that cover. You know, I loved being on the cover, but when it says king and huge, I'm like a little cringy because I'm naturally a shy person, but it's humbling because it means so much to all of us in the industry that are really driving this movement of rackets that's really taking over the hospitality industry. So I'm excited to be here, and obviously I'm a huge fan of yours.
No, thank you. I love it. The king of the court. That was my favorite part. Man, you've had such a crazy, successful career, and I can't wait to dive deep into all of it. But just briefly, if you can just tell us your story and how this whole thing started. At what point did you decide that you wanted a career in tennis? Somehow I doubt that you just kind of fell into this career path. Did you have a vision for this when you were a tennis player?
No, what people I think need to understand in life, within anything, I think so much comes out of uncertainty and so much failure. Where I am today was the result of probably the biggest failure of my life. I moved to Bolletari's. I had a scholarship there from Nick from the time I was 10 to 18. So my whole life was about tennis. My parents moved from Philadelphia to Florida, and my father took a year before he could even move down there, with work to go back and forth. So, I traveled all over the world, 9, 10 months of the year. I was 15 in the world, and when you reach that high level, top 20 in the world, number one in the country in every age group, you have one sole purpose, and that's to go pro. And all of my friends and people that I've beaten, like Monfils and Djokovic and Isner and you name it, and they're all these great players. When that doesn't happen for you, and when you're hit with a decision, do I go to college or do I turn pro? Most people, I was the number one recruit in the country for college. And most people would look at that like it's the greatest thing in the world. I mean, you can go to any college you want. SATs doesn't mean anything. Tennis gets you in. And for me, it was such a down point in my life because I felt like a complete failure because I didn't reach my goal of going pro. And, there's many reasons why I chose to go to college, but ultimately it led to the 6 darkest years, I would think, of my life. And you think that when you grow up playing tennis, especially at Bollettieri's, teaching tennis, you think of as a failure. You think it's like somebody on court 40 making $20,000 a year feeding balls. You don't really understand the many different avenues. And so after college, I didn't pick up a racket for almost 2 years. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was almost trying to turn my back to it because I was trying to hide from this failure and this constant, every time you turn on the TV and my friends are, winning Grand Slams, competing, going deep in these tournaments, it was a constant reminder of failure. And it was by chance that I got back into tennis. A friend of mine that was a director had moved to Florida and just asked if I would cover some lessons for him in Philadelphia while he was away. And in the meantime, I was lost anyways, just trying to figure out my life and what I wanted to do. And I covered those lessons, and ultimately I liked it. And I started to realize, well, first I can make money in this. So I wasn't making any money. So now I can start making some money, which gives you a little bit of breathing room and freedom. And it ultimately led to my first job at Germantown Cricket Club. And I worked for a guy named Robert Fisher. And Robert was the quintessential 80s director, 6'3", longer blonde hair. He would smoke cigarettes in the ballroom, just like what you would think. He would drive in his Porsche, and he talked about money all the time. And whether he was great or not great, the things that caught me were, wow, this could be a real profession. There's so much to this. And coming up from this competitive tennis player, I still had that need to compete and want to be the best. And for me, that really sparked everything. And it was only a year later that at 25, I got offered Green Valley, because so much of success is being in the right place at the right time, and also, recognizing success. And I'm a big believer that you're never ready for a director job. It doesn't matter if you've been a director for 5 years or 10 years, you're never fully ready for your next one because every club is so different. And then, Green Valley was just me finally having that moment and saying, I want to be the best. And I was ignorant back then to what the best is, but I wanted to grow. I wanted to have a name, because that's what always drove me, even in tennis. I wanted to be the best at something. And once I realized what my path was, it was just trial and error. Whether it was, I don't want to share anything with anybody because if they see something, they'll steal it, to now saying, I want to share everything with everybody because together we can do anything. And I think a lot of that comes from maturity and knowing what's next in life and what you want and aging. But what I really feel like, and I'm giving a commencement speech at Ferris State in March or April, and my message is, if you're good at something and you have a skill in life, don't turn your back on it, because there's so many people in this world that don't have a skill, that don't have that superpower, as I tell my kids. And tennis is that thing for me. It's a thing that I love. And it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, an electrician, you're a governor, whatever you want to be in life. You could be a lawyer and make $60,000. You could be a lawyer and make $10 million. It's the same thing with rackets. You could be a director and make $60,000. You could be a director and make $600,000. There's no limit to success once you find your passion and you connect with the right people. And I would say the level of the success that I've reached now, it's 100% on the people that have given me those opportunities, and I can remember who they were and where they were, because you never forget those people that change your life. But we're always need to take time to recognize who pointed us in the right direction and who lifted us up. And we always have a responsibility to those that come after us.
Yeah. And I mean, you still look fairly young. And I mean, I don't know how old you are. You don't have to tell us, but you look fairly young and you have what could be to many people that have been in the industry for a long time, kind of a dream job, right? So you've reached this success. What motivates you today to keep going? Like, it just keeps like you keep pushing yourself more and more now with the DCA, and obviously we'll get into all that. But what's the thing now that kind of drives you to pursue more?
I'm 39, so yes, relatively young, and I think Royal Oaks is the greatest job in the world. It's a club that the GM's fantastic and the membership's amazing, and they support rackets, and you're in a great place to live. But again, I sacrificed to get here. I moved my family to Baltimore for 3 years, and though Baltimore Country Club's a top 50 club in the world, it's still in Baltimore, and that's not an easy thing to do. But I recognize the necessary steps I had to take to get where I am. And whether that led me to be the vice president of PPR, or when COVID happened, I was in the right spot where COVID was the greatest thing that happened in my career because it put me front and center. I wrote the PTR guidelines, the USTA guidelines. I spoke at the National Club Association, CMAA. Suddenly, I was the expert. And I'm a big believer that there are no individual experts, but you have to recognize a platform. And for me, I'm just driven by more. My mind very much is like a storm. It never shuts off, which I tell people all the time, you don't really want to be like me, but I can recognize who I am and what I want. And I have 4 kids. I'm very present with them, but I also can multitask because of the people and the network that I've built up. And when you think about levels of success, like, well, what does it mean to you? I mean, that's what you have to think. To me, it's the people that make the most money, that cast the biggest shadow, have the biggest network, but most of all, the biggest influence. Because when you can influence people and when you can influence an industry, you can really make positive change to help others. So in the beginning of my career, it was to get my first club and to make a lot of money, in my mind at the time, what I thought was a lot of money. And then once I capped off there, it was opening my eyes to really what the hospitality industry is. It's not just staying at one club forever. It's a huge thing, and it changes everywhere you go. And even before I came here, what I started to learn was tennis is regional. It's always been regional. If you're in the Northeast, if you're in Florida, if you're in California, you can even see it with, RSPA. It's very regional. And what I recognized early was that rackets is national. And if you want to be a huge director and you want to help people and you want to grow and have options, well, you have to be a national name. And rackets is the one thing that allowed these directors, which kind of forced them to be on that national stage. You can't, one of the biggest people in my life when I was coming up was Mark Parsons. I mean, he is literally a god in the hospitality industry in Connecticut. You can't go in the Northeast and not know who Mark Parsons is. But outside of the Northeast, nobody knows who he is. And it's just an example of someone that's truly great that didn't step on that national stage. And I think for me, it was more of one of those things where I was pulled that way because I saw that when I was speaking at these conferences, I wasn't having 40 people listen to me. I was having 300, 400 people come consistently. And when you have that audience, I think you have that responsibility to push a message. And I'm polarizing at times, but I think anybody that drives a message is, you either, if you believe in something, there's going to be people that agree with you and people that don't like you. And there's certainly numerous people in big positions that had a problem with the Directors Club and have a problem with the things that I write and different things. But clearly it's connecting with people because the idea is people can do better together. And there's the people that stand against that are the ones that don't want us to be together. Because when you have a group of people coming together united under a common idea, a common cause, well, nothing can stop them. And that's ultimately what led me to the Directors Club. But yeah, I mean, even now at Royal Oaks, I don't know, I still want more. I always want more. I think I can do more. And I think as you step up to success and you step on different levels of it, there's more opportunities that open. Every time you level up, there's 4 more levels. And I think you're either made like that or you're not. I mean, if you're a type of person that's complacent, that you get that first director job and you stay, well, then you're never going to have those opportunities. But I mean, look at you. I mean, we just met not that long ago, and it's amazing all the people that that you're touching so quick. And it's a very small industry, but it also spans very large.
Yeah. And I like to see that. I like to see people that are striving for more, because you also shine a light on all the possibilities that are out there that maybe you didn't even think of for yourself. Did you have like a dream job when you first started?
I when I first got to Green Valley, I thought that was my dream job. I remember my wife, it was before we were married. I was there for 6 years and she's like, what's next? And I was like, well, I do great. Why would anything be next? But
Right.
I'm one of those obsessive type of people, and comments like that stick with me. And then I become obsessed with finding out what is next. And there's always, like I said, there's always those people that lead you along. I mean, people that won't talk to me anymore because they become jealous of other people's success. But one of those people was Len Samard. And I remember where I was when he called me about Baltimore Country Club and the conversation that we had and the relationship that we built as friends, which ultimately guided me through the 3 years there. And I remember he was one of the people I called when I got offered Royal Oaks. And what drove me once I got to Baltimore was I never wanted to have to apply again. I wanted to be such a name and have such a presence and have such a reputation for success that a club would call me and say, Jarrett, we want you to come here because we know what you can do. And that's what happened at Royal Oaks. And I think if you have a goal, it's not about what club is the biggest. It was, I want to be that person that's sought after. And I always walk, there's Mark Parsons said a line that, it's the director that makes the club doesn't make director. But for me, I also am on the other side that's like, well, what is a director without their club? So for as much as I push and as much as I want to keep growing and succeed and do bigger things, I'm also very humble and so appreciative of the opportunities that I have and so thankful to be where I am. As much as I wanted out of Baltimore, as much as I can go on for days of the challenges that we had when we were there, I'm so thankful for that time. And I was so thankful when I was there because of what I was learning and what it provided for my family. I did very well there. But I also think as a leader, you can make your life easy and you can make your life challenging at any club. And the directors that make their life a little bit challenging are going to do better in the long run. Their members are having more value. Their staff is growing. They're having more opportunities because you're pushing the bar. And that's what we did at Baltimore, and that's what we did at Royal Oaks, and it continues to pay off. You don't want to be a director that's there for 30 years and does nothing. There's that line that the members don't know what they don't know. But one day when you open their eyes, it's amazing what they see as possible. And so I wanted to, whether it's being at Royal Oaks and doing a mahjong and market, which has nothing to do with tennis, but I put 400 people on my courts playing mahjong and going shopping. I don't care because I don't look at tennis and pickleball as tennis and pickleball. I look at them as areas where I can group as many people as possible and create experiences. And as long as I have those people on my courts, I don't care what they're doing because it allows me opportunities to push other programs that we have. And so at Royal Oaks, what we did so well is like there used to be a tennis event and they used to get 40 people. But now when we do events, it's tennis, it's pickleball, it's juniors. So events that used to have 40 people average 120. And we were the first to get into pickleball parties, of which we do 3 to 5 a week now. And they average anywhere from 40 to 150 people. So it really allowed us to grow. And it allowed our staff to make, all of the staff makes 40 to 50% more than when I started. And that's because of the opportunity that they have. And it's our job to provide that opportunity. But if we're not ambitious and we're not constantly pushing, there's always, I'll stop rambling, but, there's the type of people, why invest in somebody if they're going to leave? A GM asked me that because we do searches and a lot of GMs call and ask for advice on different people that are coming in. And one GM down in Florida, a guy that used to work for me was a finalist. And I said, why wouldn't you hire him? He's perfect. And he said he was great. He's just too ambitious. He'll leave in 3 years. And I remember saying to him, well, wouldn't that be the greatest gift in the world? Because in 3 years, he would totally revolutionize your program to a point that your next hire could be an even bigger name and your members will have options that they never dreamed about. So I always think that people should be open to the idea that you don't need somebody forever. You just need to recognize what their gifts are and support them. And that's what could have happened at Baltimore with Kent as the GM. He was upset when I left. We were close, and then his ego got in the way. Instead of saying, Baltimore was never known ever. And then when we left, it got rated #1 in Club and Resort Business Magazine for the #1 rackets program in the country. I mean, that's absurd. It was on a national level. And that's the point. We're all moving the ship forward, no matter what it is, at a club level, at its industry level, at a personal level. We just have to keep moving forward. We can never stay still.
I think a lot of the times that can be because, especially in country clubs, tennis comes second to golf, right? Golf is the big time, is the big show. And a lot of times tennis is like an amenity. So they just kind of look at us to just cruise along, don't piss anybody off, just do your job and like keep people happy. They're not really looking for anything innovative, or they're not, clubs may not really be looking to see a whole lot of growth in their rackets or tennis departments, right? So I agree with all of that. Something that I wanted to ask you about your current position at Royal Oaks is, what do you think has had the biggest impact in your success there? I mean, you have all the bragging rights, all the things that you mentioned, like that's crazy. Parties with 50 to 100 people 3-4 times a week. What do you think has been key to all the success that you've had? And how long have you been there, by the way, at Royal Oaks?
Well, I've been here for 3.5 years now. I will say before I answer that, I think tennis or rackets coming second to golf is one of the greatest gifts that we could have at a country club. You're free to do and create however you want. And I think the idea of don't make waves is changing quickly as GMs are changing. A lot of this is because GMs don't know better, because they only know tennis and they don't understand rackets. But the GMs that are finally starting to understand are opening up their eyes, because rackets has more touch points than any other part of the club. Pool, food and beverage, the amount of people that can come throughout the whole family can't be offered anywhere else. You also have to understand the idea that compensation is different. A rackets director should make more money than a golf director, should make more money than probably anybody else except for the GM, and sometimes more than the GM. And why is that? It's because the club is liable for a salary. So say a club pays you $150,000, $200,000 a year, that's their responsibility. That's what they're liable to the membership. Now, whatever piece you get out of that, whatever percentage of lessons and growth, that's nothing to them, because they don't need that money. They don't count on that through dues. It's just extra. So as long as they cover payroll costs, if you get 15% of your lessons, you deserve to make $400,000, $500,000 a year. Because if you take a club from $400,000 in revenue to $2 million, well, you've just changed the face of your membership. Your waiting list goes up, your initiation fees go up, your dues can go up. You're changing the shape of a club. And that's the difference between the old model and what a lot of search firms want people to stick to a new model. And if you're at a club that needs to make money off of lessons, well, it's not a financially safe club anyway, so it's probably not one you want to be at. But to Royal Oaks, what my success is here is it's 100% because of the staff. And I remember before I started, I'm a big fan, a big believer that your first 100 days come 100 days at least before your first 100 days. And I had to wait almost 3 months before I started here, because when I accepted the job, my wife was 9 months pregnant. So we had to have the baby and find and move. It was a big thing. And again, another testament to there's no perfect time for anything. It's just opportunity comes when it comes, and you're either the type of person that passes it by or says, screw it, I'm gonna jump on this because it's worth it. But I remember talking to all the staff on the phone hours a day. I probably spent 7-8 hours a day. I've 12 pros, so plus 3 at the desk, plus maintenance. So I was on the phone with everyone because I wanted to have a full understanding. And what I found was, because of the person before, there was a lot of great people, but they were all working in silos and fighting and thinking, what do I get? What's for me? How can I make more? And what my goal was when I started was being able to give them this understanding that together, if we work together under a common goal and we create rules to stay consistent, so all membership is consistent, all staff is consistent, then we're all going to make more money and we're all going to have more opportunity. And I broke things off to have positions that make sense. So we've got a junior director, a head pro, and a women's director, a men's director, and all with assistants under them. So everybody's always training their replacements for when they become directors or head pros elsewhere. We've promoted in 3.5 years. My women's director is now going to become the assistant director at Bentry, so that'll be my 5th person out. Ronaldo, who you were talking to, was my women's director prior to him, who's now the director at Tampa Yacht Club. So I'm big on promoting people out. And if you work here, you'll do well, but you'll also, come work at Royal Oaks. Give me 2 years, 3 years. I'll make you a director. I'll give you those opportunities. And so I was able to recognize the talent and help them succeed. And for me, you won't see me on the cover of, I know you'll see it in like these magazines and things, but like when you come to Royal Oaks, you'll see my staff. Those are the ones that I celebrate because it's their programs. My job is to lift them up and give them what they need to succeed. And they've all exceeded my wildest expectations. So they were open to it and I was able to recognize it. And together we've created what might sound cliche, but we've created a family that actually cares about each other. And yeah, people fight. They're like brothers and sisters, but there's a genuine deep care for each other. And that's why you've seen them do better. And that's also why the program has went from $900,000 almost $3 million a year in revenue, which my old GM would always say, you need to talk about participation, not revenue. But honestly, does revenue not show you participation? If you're not making the revenue, no one's coming to the courts. And it's not about raising prices. It's about how many people are coming out and where they're going. So my greatest asset is the staff. And in particular, my head pro, her name's Chris Molina. She's been here for 32 years. Her brother was the director here for 20 years ago. And that's someone that on my first day could have been horrible. She could have been like, I know it all. I don't need him. And it was the opposite. After 32 years, she wanted to retire and was done. And I think she got a second wind. And now she's writing articles. She's speaking RSPA. And she sat on my court for 3 months learning pickleball. And now she's certifying people all over the country. And so like to see them have life again, that's truly special. And she's been the greatest blessing I've had here. And I think everybody should understand that. Like, no director is successful. I don't care how cliche it sounds. You're only as good as the people you have around you. So you need to support them.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you kept some of the staff, because I think that's the thing for a lot of people getting a new position, especially a new director position, is like, do you keep the people that were there before? Do you bring in new staff? Can you talk about how you approach that? Like, tell us like how big your staff is, how many people you have, and maybe some red flags that you might see, like, should I keep this person or should I hire this person?
I think it's process. My old GM used to say, you have to decide if you want to die in this mountain. Like, is this something you want to pursue? And at Baltimore Country Club, there was a head pro that was hired before me. Age doesn't matter, but he was 64 years old. I knew he lied about where he worked and what he did before, but he couldn't string rackets. He couldn't play platform tennis. He couldn't play pickleball. He knew nothing about squash. I had 5 sports under me. And so I get there, and at that club, there was only like a group of 10 of the best ladies there that had the biggest voices. And he became best friends with them, called them athletes. He wasn't dumb of what he was doing. And I remember talking to my GM and showing, he knew he was very on board with my plan on how we were going to grow this and what we were going to do. And ultimately, we had to get rid of him because we needed to grow rackets. It's not just about it doesn't matter if he's great teaching 1 or 2 groups of women tennis. We had to grow juniors. We had to grow squash and tennis and platform tennis. And to grow clubs, it's all about your connection points. How do you connect the dots from one racket sport to another? So if there's 100 people playing tennis, on average, 30% will play another racket sport that you offer. Baltimore Country Club have had a crossover rate of 82.9%. And that is unheard of. If you're doing over 50%, you're killing it. And so I remember when we got rid of them, a lot of people, they started a petition and people would just sign things. And I remember there were 64 women that signed a petition that my GM had to meet with all of them. And I remember moving my young family. I remember being on Christmas thinking I was going to get fired and taking a call at a hotel room in the hallway, stressed out, but knowing I made the right decision. I remember my GM saying, "You're okay. You're not getting fired. I believe in you. You're doing the right thing." And he stuck by me. And that was one of the most stressful times. But again, I could have kept him and it could have been fine. But by getting rid of him, I was able to hire at the Colin Johns, who now is #1 in the world in pickleball. But why he was great was because he was from Maryland. He was a pro tennis player. He was already top 5 in the world in pickleball. I sent him to Connecticut for 2 weeks to learn platform tennis. And I knew, being an athlete at that level, he would be able to pick up platform tennis instantly. He became the best platform tennis player in Maryland, one of the top 3 for sure. And then he was able to teach squash. So this is a guy that came in and was instantly connecting all over the place and growing everything. But we had to get through that period to get to the right person. And so if I had to do it again, which God, I hope I would never have to do that again, I made the right decision and I would again. But you have to be willing to do those things. And you also have to have the right support behind you. And then when I got to Royal Oaks, it was different. I didn't want to get rid of anybody because I saw such immense talent in everybody. And I thought the people that I didn't think would personally fit our team, there's been people that were good for a year and then they just didn't fit anymore, because who we were in year 1 at Royal Oaks is not who we were at year 2. It's not who we are now, because the program's constantly evolving as we grow, whether we add programs, adding facilities, what we offer, it just grows and people can't keep up. There's a lot of burnout. And I'm totally against, you'll hear Chris Gale talk about the 5-day work week. I think that's all bullshit. I think, you got to put, if somebody wants to work and they want to kill themselves working because they want that opportunity, give it to them. People are adults. They can tell you how much they want to work and how much they don't. I worked, and this is no bullshit, but I was on the court 69 hours a week at Green Valley for 7 years. It was all me. It was basically a teaching job with a director title. But the people that didn't make it at Royal Oaks, I didn't fire them. I could have. There's plenty of options that people I could have fired. But I got them. I recognized where they could be great at. There was multiple people that I thought would be better at smaller clubs because that they could shine and they're smart and they're knowledgeable and they're fantastic. But they're fantastic if they have time. And at Royal Oaks, when you have huge parties and tons of people coming and doing multiple events at once, you have to be willing to ask for help and you have to be willing to work together. So if you're somebody that wants to show that you can do everything by yourself, that worked year 1, but it's not going to work at year 3. And so we've been able to get people, worked out where they got head pro jobs and assistant director jobs at very small clubs, and they're very successful. But it's the ability to have that network to move them along. And then there's been people that have been great, like Ronaldo, who I never would have wanted to leave. I love the guy. Our kids were friends. Our wives were friends. But we had that relationship where he said, this is what I want. And I remember sitting with him and going through interviews and looking at his resumes. And I do that with numerous people. It's our job to help them succeed. And this staff's much bigger than at Baltimore. I think I had 4 between 5 sports, and here we have 12 teaching pros for 2 sports. But we did, in 5 sports, I think we did $500,000 a year at Royal Oak at Baltimore. And we do almost $3 million here. So it's a bigger scale. But I do think it's our job to empower people to be entrepreneurial. Everybody, I say, this is what I want, and then they go off and they tell me how it's going to happen. My job is to create the ideas. Their job is to make it happen, as well as constantly bouncing off ideas. But it's a collective effort to be successful. And again, every club's different, and I never dreamed that I'd have a rackets program that's this big. But we built it this big, and we did that together. And so the success belongs to everybody here. It's not just my story, it's theirs.
That's fantastic. I think that's always something in people's minds. Like I said, when you take on a new leadership role, is like, do you want to keep the same people that may have different habits, supported someone different? And there's always some history there, different dynamics that you might not be aware of. So that can always be tricky for sure. But I think I agree. I think you got to give people a fair chance and evaluate them and give them a chance, because you might be surprised and might stay with you and buy into the vision that you have for the program. I wanted to ask you about the DCA, right? So the Directors Club of America. I want to see if you can let's start with the beginning of that too. Like, how did that come about? Was that something that kind of evolved with Chris and Michael? Was this your idea? Tell us what's the story and what's the why?
Well, since COVID, I was probably doing 12 to 14 conferences a year. I've spoken everywhere, Racket and Paddle Show, every CMAA place you can imagine, national conference, anything and everything. And as I said earlier, started to gain a following. And what I've noticed is when I was going to these conferences, for example, back when I would go to PTR before they ruined their whole organization, but when I would go, what I would see is there's 2 or 3 good speakers and the rest are just filler. And if you're somebody like a bigger name because people know who you are, you're sitting with other people at the same level. Your network grows, or it almost gets smaller, but it grows with the same type of people. Ambition finds ambition. And so like there might be one or two areas where people are actually making ideas happen and moving people forward. But for 400 people that are there, I would say 380 of them are just, I mean, who needs to learn how to feed? If you don't know how to feed a forehand, you're not learning it at a conference. You're wasting your time. And so I had this idea that, I wanted, when I was coming up, and even still today, I want to be attached to the people that make the most money, have the biggest ideas, have the biggest network, have these huge jobs, because if you emulate somebody, then you want to be like them. And then I wanted to befriend them because if they're your friends, they can lift you up. We can lift each other up.
Yeah.
But if nobody knows who you are, they can't help you. The same thing with the Directors Club. Like we have 1,000 members, and every now and then there'll be someone's like, I don't know if I'm getting value from this. And I'm like, well, what value do you get out of life? I mean, you get out of things what you put into it. I mean, you have these huge names at every club, but if you don't reach out to them, and if you're shy, if you're not reaching out to us to introduce you, well, you're not going to get anything out of it, because success just doesn't come knocking on your door one day and say, hey, do you want this huge club? You have a platform now. I mean, I wish I had this platform when I was coming up, but everybody has this platform now. I mean, look at Brock Orlowski. I think he's incredible. Before I met him at the retreat, had no idea who he was other than joining the Directors Club. He's great in the Midwest, but he didn't have a name. Comes to the Directors Club, we meet, he's fantastic. He writes this article about the Directors Club retreat that was great for RSPA, like Mid-Atlantic or Midwestern. I sent it to Brian Dillman, who then puts it on a national level. And from there, he just kept getting bigger and bigger, and everybody knows who Brock is now. And he's a great writer, he's a great speaker, he's a great director, he's knowledgeable. But it's just having that platform to put you on that national stage. And for me, I'll never forget where I was when Dan Santorum called me and asked me to speak at PPR because I was changing. I didn't answer the phone, and because I was changing my 1-year-old's diaper at the time, and I saw a message and it said Dan Santorum, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Why is he calling me? And it changed my life. And I wanted to create something where we can bring people on that we can learn lessons from. I hate PowerPoints. I hate people lecturing to us. I like things like this where it's off the cuff and it's a conversation, because there's no bullshit when you do this. Some bad things might come out, some good things might come out, but it's the truth. You can't lie in a moment, like it's too quick to think of something. And for whether someone's telling you the right information or the wrong information, you're getting something that's authentic. And I didn't want just rackets people coming on. I wanted leaders that talk about their story. It's one thing to be successful. It's another thing to figure out how did they become successful and learn those character traits and behaviors that we can then put into our own lives and then create that network. Again, like I told you, like rackets should be national. It shouldn't be regional. And it grew. I think everything's going to fail, just for the record. When I start something, there's not one thing I do that I think that's going to succeed, with the exception of becoming a director. I know I'll do well there because I love it and I know it inside and out. But like these ideas, I'm always thinking it won't work out because I want it, and I'm very conservative that way. And I remember when we sold our first Directors Club membership, it was mid-November of 22. And I remember being like, this is amazing, but oh shit, because now like if I don't get any more members, I have to do a year of these talks for one person. And once I get going, I'm like, there's no stopping me. I'm like a train. Like I love it. And like when the first retreat was over, I was so depressed. And then when I could start pushing this year upcoming retreat, it was like my birthday all over again. I loved it. But so people often ask me, well, why did you start the Directors Club? And it always comes down to one thing, and it's just that we're better together. And if we all come together and we compete with each other and we celebrate each other and we trust each other, there's nothing that we can't obtain, and we can all do better. Michael Jordan's down the street. Chris Gale is going to be down the street. I don't care if they do better than me. I'm doing fantastic and I'm happy. It's only going to help the industry if they do better. When Michael tells me how busy he is, I love it. We always compete. Oh, I had 100 people at my ugly sweater. oh, well, I just had John Isner here. And I'm like, well, you have John Isner every year. So isn't that boring? But it's this, it's this back and forth that's fun. And we should be pushing each other and pushing ideas. And that's what it's all about. And it's just grown. I think it's a movement that's coming at the right time, and it's a place for everybody. I hate that one search firm goes to PTR, one search firm goes to RSPPA, and people aren't talking, and it's one versus the other. And the Directors Club is the one place that unites everybody and gives everybody a voice. And then you can hear that voice and you can decide what works for you. And if you need help, you write us, you call us, and you say, hey, this is what I need. And you get anything you can need. I need to buy trophies. I need someone to build my courts. I need to talk to the CEO of Yola. Whatever you need, it's there, because there's no network like this. Len Samard, KKW, there is no network like the Directors Club. And that's because it was built by all of us, and it really belongs to all of us.
Yeah. Well, I think it's key, right? To have that discernment when you read an article, when you listen to someone on a podcast, right? Like, you take it in and see if that suits your experiences and your beliefs. It's definitely, like you were saying, some people may not agree with you. You're very passionate about your beliefs and the way that you do things. And that might rub some people the wrong way. But to me, it's like, it's not a cult. It's a club, right? Like, not everybody has to agree with every single thing that you might say, for example. But what are some, you mentioned that. So what are those things that you've said that have pissed people off?
I think there's a lot of people that are older in the industry that held relevance at one time that are struggling to hold on to relevance, because that's what it's all about, right? If you're relevant, you have influence and you can do great things. And to stay relevant, you have to put your ego aside and be willing to celebrate somebody else. I'm very thankful that I'm on these magazines and I'm having the success right now, but there will be a day when other people have that and have a bigger platform. And I just hope to be their friend and to celebrate them. And because together we can move things forward. And I always say, you don't have to be the star of the story. You just have to strive to be a part of the story. And if you can stay a part of the story, you will always be relevant. And I think there's a few search and executive people in particular that have a problem with that, because they don't want the industry united. They want these pros to take these bad deals and they'll tell you why they're not bad deals, and just move on because they care about getting their $25,000. And instead of, when they can't get an expert, they call them an up-and-comer, which is just a bullshit line for a first-time director that'll accept anything. But what we found since COVID is that an average director is staying at a club 2 to 3 years. And they're staying in a club 2 to 3 years because they're doing too well, because they've grown these programs $500,000 or more, and their contract's not giving them any more money for doing that. And so they get frustrated. And what we need to do, and what we've been doing, is bringing, and we're about to partner with CMAA, where they get accreditation, for being for GMs being on the Directors Club. Directors Club there's a lot of GMs a part of it. And the goal is to have half directors and half GMs, because it's understanding what Racquets is and how should we compensate, how it is a partnership, because we want our directors to stay forever if we can. But the directors have to also understand that, and also, they have to be able to help their staff leave. But, it's also, the risk is also on the director, right? Like, they have to grow the programs. And if they don't, the club shouldn't be putting out as much. And it's an understanding. But, these certain search people, they don't want people to unite, because then there's when people trust each other, and what's happening now, and they're sharing contracts and asking each other for advice, it drives questions. And people don't want questions. They want the quick solution so that they can get paid and move on to the next. But when somebody leaves a club to take a new job, it's a ripple effect, because then another club opens, and then another club, and then another club. And instead of having musical chairs, it's understanding how to get things, and I'm just using compensation as one of them, but it's understanding how to get that right so that people stay and they're taken care of. You don't tell somebody a job's going to be $300,000, and then when they get there, it's $170,000, because you're betting on people's lives. And we have a responsibility as leaders and people in these positions to be authentic and truthful, because there's a trust there. And I think the people that have lost relevance, I know they've lost trust. And when you lose somebody's trust, that's the worst thing in the world because you can't get it back. And those are the people that have issues. The same thing on certain board members of PTR, where they're so focused on trying to claim the money right now instead of focusing on the people. Our responsibility is not to make money. The Directors Club does not make money. I didn't start this to make money. We started this to bring people together, to give them opportunities so that they can make more money. And when they make more money, their staff makes more money. And when their staff makes more money, the members have a better experience because they have more options. It's a ripple effect. And that's what a lot of people don't want that are older, because that's not how it used to be. But tennis is not rackets, and it's a different world. But it also allows us to compensate in different ways where the club's not liable, but where everybody can grow and do it, be amazing together. And the last thing I'll say is, clubs, they have master plans for facilities, but you need to have master plans for people. How do they grow from year 1 to year 3 to year 7 to year 10? Where are they going? Because people leave clubs for only a few reasons. And it's compensation, it's lack of education, and it's lack of a pathway forward. Those are the 3 reasons people leave clubs. Compensation is one thing. The other thing is giving them that platform to say, go out there. Like, who wouldn't want their club on a national stage? In an industry right now that's supposed to grow 300% and lose 30% of pros, Royal Oaks has no issue hiring. Daniel just is leaving next month. The minute he told me he's going to go to Bentry and we secured that for him, the next day I had somebody great already hired for Royal Oaks. And that's what can happen for everybody if we come together. But, there's the people that have a problem are the older people that are trying to hold on to relevance in the wrong way, instead of saying, it's okay that you're having your moment, I just want to be a part of it. And that's a shame, but that's what the world is. And it also, I think it's a fantastic thing, because I just double down and I'm, this is 1,000+ deep now. And the message is clear. We're better together and we got to keep moving forward.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've always been just so surprised. I used to be part of what's now the RSPA, now in PTR, but whatever. They're both very similar. I'm surprised, going to conferences and just looking at all the education that they offer. There's never enough information about compensation, what compensation looks like in different parts of the country, what compensation might look like in going from a country club to a public facility to coaching college tennis. There's no information on this is how you look at a contract. These are the things that you should be looking for. These are the things that you should be asking for. There's no conversation about any of it with
they don't know.
With any of them.
They don't know. I mean, listen, were you in Palm Springs for RSPA?
No.
So I was in Palm Springs. Brian Dillman is a friend of mine. He joined the Directors Club, but before when he was at Mihab Body Tech. And I think he's a genius for marketing. But when you look even at that conference, they had 100 speakers, 98 of them were horrible. And it's because, everybody wants to create this message that, we want to create the total professional. But, these organizations were started for the teaching professional, to create better coaches. And people, like I said, they don't need to learn how to hit forehands. They need to learn how, like you said, they need a 20,000-foot view. What does compensation look like around the country? How do you grow programs? How do you influence industries? It's something general. That's what we do. And within that, you can navigate anywhere you want. That's why, when I talked, the busiest talk at that conference was me and Brian on stage. And I'm not saying that because it was me, but it was because it was a very general topic, which I don't even remember what it was now. And it was just me and Brian on stage having a conversation. But everybody is governed by boards and, they're so held up in different things. And that's where the Directors Club is able to have a foot in both worlds. We don't want everybody. We want the directors and the head pros that want to be directors. It's saying this is how together, this might sound bad, but look at countries that have a dictatorship. It just decisions move quicker because it's decisions made and they move forward where, there's not a lot of talk. And I think now that's what the retreat's so special about is everybody's a decision maker. So when three people come together, you could say, let's do this. And it's like, okay, we'll do it. You don't have to ask anybody, because who makes the decisions at a country club? The director makes the decision for the program. So let's put them all together so that decisions can be made. We don't open it up to teaching pros, or not because they're not great. I mean, there are teaching pros in the Directors Club, but they have to be sponsored by the director, which is saying they want to be directors. And I think that you're always going to have that in PTR. You're always going to have that in USPTA, where it's just, how do you hit a forehand? How do you hit a backhand? Which is fine. But they also need to be able to market it for what it is. And if they want to get into like executive leadership, well, then they should have a day that's only for executive leaders within the conference, and they have to break it into two. But I think, right now what's going to happen is USPTA doesn't have, or RSP, they don't have accreditation from USTA. USTA is going to strip PTR from their accreditation in April. So ultimately, once USTA gets into certifying, you have two organizations now that are just trying to create enough value to stay afloat. That's why Dan Santorum was fired, because USPTR wanted to control PPR, which Dan set up as separate entities. They wanted to control PPR because PPR finally had more members than PTR. They needed those 9,000, 10,000 members. They needed that money to survive what's to come with USTA. So in both organizations right now, the focus is not on the education. It's not on the people. The focus is, I just need to keep getting those members so that we can stay afloat. When USPTA was started 100 years ago, and ultimately when Dennis Vandermeer started PTR, it was started because they wanted to help coaches be better coaches. The Directors Club is, we want to help directors unite and become better together, which again walks in both worlds. But that's why you see that at these RSPA and PTR. Also, look at who's running PTR right now. I mean, Brian knows not Brian Dillman, Brian Pokey, whatever, knows nothing about country clubs. He knows nothing about, he's really terrible. So when you look at these things, how are they going to book talent if you don't know anybody? What do you think is talent? Like we have at our retreat, we have senators that tie to our story. We have the number one trauma surgeon in the world coming. Like, we have people that tie to a story. And when you see our talks, they're people that tie to a story to help you be better. But you have to know what your message is, and you have to know what your purpose is. And I think both of those organizations have lost both. I think Brian Dillman has done an incredible job at making RSPA relevant again. And I think he's on the right track. So that's why, we continue to support him. And, I just joined my whole club to it because I've always believed in investing in people. And so I'm going to invest in Brian because I believe in what he's doing. But I don't think those conferences are ever going to become what we would value as directors. The value there is just to, see the other directors and have a nice trip to California. But, you live in Tampa. I don't think you want to go to Saddlebrook. That place is a dump. So, I don't know if that was the best decision.
Well, that's why people always say that when they go to a conference, the thing that they get the most out of is just the networking. It's just talking to people, because those are the conversations that you're having, right? It's like, how do I become successful in this industry? I love tennis. Sure, teach me a new drill. Sure, let's talk about developing juniors. But how can I be financially successful in this industry so that I can stay with it for the long term? How can I show me how I can start my own LLC? Like, these are the conversations that you need to be having with your pros, with your tennis professionals, right? So that they can see a future for themselves and they can have a successful career. You're talking about the search firms, the process of like applying to all these jobs. They do all these questionnaires, and they're getting a lot of information that I think it's very valuable for the industry, that I would hope that they will share that, publish it, write an article, something regarding all the different things that they ask you about, your compensation, what you're looking for, because they sure ask you a ton of questions when you apply to those.
When we're at the retreat, when we do a talk on compensation, we have the contracts from the last 4 different searches at the time that was done, that Len Samar did. And we talked about them, and we figured out, like, is this job what they say it's going to be? It's so open and honest that that you can't hide from it. But the other thing I'll say is when you're talking about conferences in general, directors are very successful people. The directors make money that doctors make, that CEOs make. Like this is a real industry. We're running companies. Like this is a huge job. People, and if you're in the industry, you understand it. So, for the people that aren't, they're not going to listen to this anyway. So you understand the job that we have. So to go to a conference and be paying $8 for a cold coffee and getting a box lunch is pathetic. Like that, you need to treat people by like the success that they are. And when you come to the Directors Club retreat, I mean, it's like going to a wedding on steroids. The amount of food, the amount of lobster and steak and shrimp and cold bar stations and sushi stations and open bars, cigar rollers, desserts. It's a party, and it's a party of people celebrating success, because when people have a drink and they relax and they talk to each other and they're able to be raw and honest and genuine, amazing things can happen. The fact that you can have Dan Santorum and Brian Dillman and all these, the CEO of Selkirk, the CEO of Yola, the vice president of Wilson, all these people in a room together, anything can happen. And that's what we should be, striving for. But
yeah,
I'm just such a believer in this industry and what's possible. And we're really at a pivotal point in it. And we will see PTR or USP. One of them will be gone. I believe it'll be PTR, but one of them will be gone when USTA starts in with their certification. And that's okay. But the question is going to be is how do we keep moving forward together? And I hope that's, through the Directors Club. And I hope that it's competing and celebrating each other and putting it out there on LinkedIn and different things. But there's nothing wrong with transparency in an industry where everybody knows what you make because they can go on GuideStar, which it's so like, in some levels it's great because it allows you to understand a club, but on other levels it leaves you vulnerable where people can see what you make. But in any case, if people can see that anyways, well, why would you ever be secretive with an offer that could ultimately change your life if you can make it better? And that was one of the greatest lessons that I had, and that was one of the things that I valued is when I had offers for Baltimore and then ultimately Royal Oaks, I was able to give it to trusted people, and they were able to give me their opinions. And I'll tell you, the difference of 2 or 3 words can change your income by thousands. It can change your staff's income by thousands. And so we have to be able to be vulnerable and open and put our egos away and be able to celebrate each other. And it's okay to compete. Competition is the greatest thing in the world. We just also have to be able to say, you're amazing too. And I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think everyone should consider both, right? Like consider PTR or RSPA or both, and the Directors Club. I just joined the Directors Club. Michael Jordan, he's like, hey, you should join. Hey, you should join. And I was just kind of like, oh, sure, I'll look at it. Oh, sure, I'll look at it. And I never really paid attention to it a whole lot until I finally did. I talked to him, and, he's like amazing to talk to. I've been trying to get him on the podcast, so I still have to convince him to do it. But
just have him have like about 6 old fashions before, and he'll be the best guest you ever have. So that's what the Directors Club is. You feel like it's genuine. Like people want to sit on the phone with you for an hour and help you. And these aren't nobodies, Yeah. It's like when we say, oh, you're in Florida. Oh, we know someone that would be perfect. That doesn't happen in the real world.
Right. When he told me about the retreat, I was like, okay, do I really want to spend the money, go out there and all that? And I was like, well, then what's the point of joining? To me, like the membership is kind of like what gets you in. It's like the base. And then like, if you really want to use the membership is like, go to the retreat, be surrounded by people that are amazing, that dream big, that are doing big things in the industry. And it's contagious. Like you're just going to absorb that energy for yourself,
I'll tell you something. So everybody that goes to the retreat is going to get $2,000 in gift bags. I mean, it's just last year was $1,500. This year it's $2,000, from anywhere from tennis rackets to pickleball paddles to clothes to string, you name it. It's unbelievable. But I remember at the welcome party last year, this year we have 2 parties. So this is, when I tell you over the top, you haven't experienced over the top until you come to this. It's amazing. But I remember there's so many people that I'm friends with. Chris Gale and I, we started this thing together with Michael. I had never met Chris in person until the retreat last year. I remember coming down the elevator and seeing him, giving him a hug, and it was like I've known him forever. But that's what it's like for all those people. It's these big names that know each other, but they might see each other once a year and never in person. And, this whole Boca West thing started because Matthew Linderman and I follow each other on LinkedIn, have been fans of each other for years. I'm a huge fan of his. And then I had, I said, screw it. I'm going to ask him to come on the Directors Club. He came on. We instantly became real friends. And I said, I want to start this retreat. I need it to be at the greatest club in the world. Like, can I do it there? And I remember seeing him for the first time in person at the retreat last year and literally being starstruck. I mean, this is the biggest GM in the world. And you have that starstruck feeling. And there's nothing like that. You don't get that. And I'm not saying don't join these certifications. I'm a member of every one, from all the PTRs to the RSPT, and I always will be, because I'm a fan of the industry. And if we have, and especially if there's nothing wrong, it's just you get out of it what you put into it. So you should be in all these. I believe University of Florida course is horrible and CRSE is great. That's a differentiator. But when you talk about, the retreat, like, how cool is that to be, like you said, you're surrounded by these people that are all doing these incredible things. It's infectious. There's no people the people that are complacent, they're not there. It's sold out in 28 days in an industry that doesn't sell out for anything. I mean, that's unheard of. But everything we do, from just joining, like, to making sure everybody gets paddles, for their clubs, $395 to join, but everybody gets $600 worth of stuff. And there's nobody that asks for more paddles that we ever say no to going to a retreat and getting 2,000, because I'm a big believer that, yes, the value is there in the relationships and the people. The people are the value always. But it's nice to have something tangible, because not everybody is like us where they can recognize the opportunity of just seeing people and having this experience. But if they have something tangible, they can justify it. And then once they're in, then once you realize how great it is, then you never want to leave.
Yeah, exactly. And then, Jarrett, I won't keep you much longer. Share with us, I call it the grand slam moment, the double bagel moment of your career so far. So the high and the low.
Oh, God. The low was Baltimore. I mean, it was the necessary step in my career that ultimately led me where I am, and not just at Royal Oaks, but the Directors Club and everything that I've learned. But it was a very, very hard 3 years with challenges and obviously COVID and everything. One that I think I'll have scars for the rest of my life, but again, was necessary. There is no success without sacrifice, and I have sacrificed, and I continue to.
Course.
And the greatest moment in my career, obviously, so I can't really put it into one, but I would say obviously coming to Royal Oaks has been one of those moments that has changed my life, has changed my family's life, and then I'm eternally grateful for every day. I think Todd Harbour is the greatest GM I've ever worked for. You can feel culture when you walk here. And then, the Directors Club, I mean, it continues to be, it's a shining light in my life and in the industry, and it's something that I wholeheartedly believe in. And I always say to my wife, I feel like I have 2 full-time jobs, but like, I'm up at 4 a.m. I go to sleep late. Like, I love driving this, and it's exhausting, but like, the connections that I've made and the genuine friendships that I've made from it and seeing where it's going, I'm so proud of it. And I'm so proud of the other directors and people that are getting these great jobs, and I'm so happy to cheer them on. And I even when I say that, it sounds so cliche, because there's so many people that just aren't genuine, that don't want to see people do well. But like, I'm so proud of what we're doing together, and I'm so proud that everyone feels ownership in this, because that's what I wanted. I wanted a movement that united people, that helped them do better and help change their families' lives and help memberships grow. And I think we're achieving that. And we're very much still in the beginning stages of it. There's a lot of partnerships in the air right now that we're working on in different areas. But, I believe if you were to ask me that question in 5 years, I do believe the Directors Club will be the crowning achievement in my career. And that's what I'm hopeful for, because it's definitely the thing that's allowing me to touch on the most amount of people. And it's just been a blessing.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jarrett. I had a blast talking to you. Again, I really appreciate your time. Don't want to abuse it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's fantastic.
Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you, Jarrett, for sharing your time with us. I hope you are all enjoying the podcast. We have a total of 58 different episodes so far, all with different and incredible guests, so make sure to check them out. I hope you get to experience lots of Grand Slam moments in 2025, and I will see you next week for an episode with one of our favorite California girls, the one and only Carrie Buck. See you then.